This is part 2 of 6 evenings we're doing here at Round Table on the legend of Ernest Hemmingway. And we're doing it for fairly obvious reasons. Hemingway's life was larger than his contemporaries, any of them. And his influence on the American style is so great as to be still quite immeasurable. If you missed us last Friday, part 1 dealt with the Hemingway legacy, specifically what's left in the substantial body of his unpublished work. Our guests were Mary Hemmingway, an author, of course, in her own right, and Jo August, curator of the Hemingway collection at the John F. Kennedy Library. They've come back tonight with more unpublished photographs and excerpts of unpublished manuscripts. I'm Harold Hayes, and I can hardly wait to see what's next. Let me recap. We had a discussion about Dangerous Summer and the fact that only 15% approximately of that manuscript appeared in Life magazine in 3 segments. We had a discussion of A Movable Feast and the fact that while that was published posthumously, there were at least 4 things that had been not published within it. And of those 4, we discussed the Fitzgerald episode going with the Hemingways to a football game.
From a football game.
Coming from a football game, and a row which occurred thereafter. Ford Maddox Ford, and some rather uncomplimentary remarks made about him. A young American boxer, and at that point we had to stop because we came to the end of part 1. The 4th of the Immovable Feast.
I came across it today.
Which is what?
It's a story about how he used to take his eldest son, then nicknamed Bumby, to sit in his carriage while Ernest sat in a cafe and wrote with a pencil. I've got so much of that penciled writing. As a young man in Paris. And his discussion with Bumby. Bumby was learning, he spoke pretty good French.
He called him Mr. what? There was something about a Mr.
Mr. Bumby.
Mr. Puss. Didn't he call him something
No,
like
no, Puss was the cat.
Ah.
Puss was the cat.
But did he call him Mr. Bumby?
Yes.
And how long is that? Is that a finished piece?
That's about a 6-page story. Charming, really.
Why did you leave it out?
I can't remember.
So that will be published.
It may well be published. Eventually, somehow, somewhere. It's just sweet and gay and pleasant.
Now, we come to the Garden of Eden, which is perhaps, according to Carlos Baker and others who've written about it, the most controversial and assume the largest work.
It certainly is the largest.
Tell us a bit about that.
And, well, in consultation with Scribners, we have not really gone into it seriously yet because it's vast and it's amorphous and it's tenuous and it goes on and on and on. Conversations, dialogue, 5,000 pages of dialogue, mostly about food and sleeping together, things like that. I find it rather dull, and it would be a very difficult job to edit properly. There are parts of it, and the other thing is, it's a house within a house. The construction concerns, the general story is a man and 2 ladies in a sort of triangular arrangement living probably in the 20s on the Riviera of France. But inside that is an entirely different thing that the guy is a writer, and he is writing a whole story, which he picks up from time to time, about a man, this man, when he was a child, of an elephant hunter in Africa. And it's extremely complicated.
When was it, when did he start it, and how, what was the period of the writing of it?
I think the mid-50s, something like that. And as I say, it requires an enormous amount of time, and perhaps, in the end, would not be worth publishing. I think it's inferior to most of his other work. The
Last Tycoon, which was, of course,
yes,
finished, I suppose, up to about 2/3 of the work,
yes,
was published with Edmund Wilson's
the final
notes
chapters
about the intentions of the author in completing it, including charts and scales and all sorts of notes about completion. This, I suppose, is not to that degree shaped that it might be published as a sort of working manuscript.
The distance between the end and the beginning is, around the world 45 times.
Really?
So it seems to me. Who read it in my behalf kindly was Malcolm Cowley, the critic, and made notes. And he agreed with me that it would be an extremely difficult thing to put into form compact enough to make it. It's so repetitious.
Would it be
People
available?
having Vichy water, they drink, I don't know, 2 or 3 tons of Vichy water in this book, and with a little whiskey added, of course.
Would it
Things
be
like that.
available to scholars?
Oh, eventually, yes. Joe will have it eventually, and we may pick parts of it to publish.
You have the opening of it and have kindly consented to read at least the first paragraph of that.
Doesn't indicate that I approve of it. It's too amorphous, and it's quite unlike Ernest in most of his writing, it seems to me. That's much better. Anyway, the title is The Garden of Eden, and it begins. It's a dear little town. They were living at Le Gros du Roi then, and the hotel was on a canal that ran from the walled city of Aigues-Mortes straight down to the sea. They could see the towers of Aigues-Mortes across the low plain of the Camargue, and they rode there on their bicycles at some time of nearly every day along the white road that bordered the canal. In the evenings and the mornings, when there was a rising tide, sea bass would come into it, and they would see the mullet jumping wildly to escape from the bass, and watch the swelling bulge of the water as the bass attacked.
That could be by no other writer.
Don't you think so?
I think that first paragraph is fine. I would certainly move on to the next.
Would
if I
you
were
like to
reader.
edit this whole manuscript?
Let me now ask
For
you, because you told me over the
consideration.
telephone that in going through all these papers, you found envelopes you apparently had forgotten existed.
I stick them in my files or in the bank, and then I forget about them, unfortunately.
It's better than money. One called Billy Gilbert you've brought, which you do very much approve of. It has not been published.
We must remember that this was written by Ernest probably before he published anything. Very
really?
early on. It was obviously when he was a young man in Upper Michigan, or the Northern Peninsula, or whatever it's called. This is a straight little thing that touches me, and it does seem very earnesty to me. Billy Gilbert was an Ojibwe that lived up near Susan Lake. Mrs. Billy was the nicest-looking Indian woman in Upper Michigan, and they had 2 fat brown little kids named Beulah and Prudence. Billy and Mrs. Billy had both gone to Mount Pleasant to school, and Billy was a good farmer. Along in 1950, nobody at the Bay knew why. Billy went up to the Sioux, that's Sault Ste. Marie, Canada side, and enlisted in the Black Watch. This summer, Billy came home. He had 2 scraps of ribbon sewed on his tunic over his heart, and 3 gold pencil stripes on his left sleeve. Nobody around the Bay knew what the ribbon stood for. No, I'm sorry. Nobody knew that the ribbon stood for the MM, military medal, and the DCM, which is the Distinguished Conduct Medal. All the boys that came back had ribbons on. Some had 3 and 4. You could buy them at the camps where they were discharged. But everybody made a lot of fun of his kilts. Look at the Injun with skirts on, loafers would holler. And when he rested his pack and lit a cigarette, someone was sure to say, "Oh, look at her, she smokes." That was always good for a laugh. It wasn't the kind of homecoming Billy had pictured. He hiked up the road to Susan Lake and found his shack empty. The door was padlocked and his garden was sod, and there was crack grass in his young orchard, choking the young trees that the rabbits hadn't girdled. Billy turned down the road to a neighbor's. "Mrs. Gilbert?" said the man in the doorway, looking amusedly at Billy's kilts. She went off with Simon Green's boy. Sold the place to Goldstein at Charlevoix. It ain't been farmed this year. You're Billy, eh? Well, they're living down the state somewheres." The neighbor stood in the doorway holding a lamp. Billy turned away, struggled with his pack, and swung into his Highlander stride down the road in the dusk, his bonnet cocked on one side, his bare knees swinging under his kilts as they had swung down the Bapaume-Cambrai road in France. His face was as solid as ever, and his eyes looked a long way through the dark. Then he commenced whistling. The tune he whistled was, "It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go."
That's very nice. Thank you.
That moves me.
Jo August, you've brought us some more photographs.
Yes, I did.
We want to move briskly through the front section of them, and then we're going to take a little time with the latter section. So go right to them at this point, and you tell us what we're seeing as we look.
You're seeing Ernest. I don't
That
know.
awful? I think it's just hideous.
He's interested.
He looks
however,
like a banker.
bemused. And the next would be, let's see. This is in the Serengeti, you tell me.
Yes, in the Serengeti Plain during Ernest's first safari.
Green hills of Africa grew out of this first safari.
That's right.
1933.
And here?
We were fishing up beyond, this was at early in the 50s, 49, I guess. Up beyond Cortina d'Ampezzo in the Dolomite Mountains. Charming little lake. We didn't catch any fish.
Caught one here. What's this?
Yeah, that's a grouper, I think. Of course, I don't recognize the boat. It's a dinghy, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Big grouper. That's me with some chucker.
That's Idaho. Is it?
Idaho, right, in the fall. Chucker partridge. They imported them from the Himalayas.
He described you as a great wing shot
Seeded them
one time,
here.
didn't he? And this?
Isn't that ridiculous? I don't know who the other man is. He looks happy, however.
Yeah. These pictures, we'll mention for our audience, have not been published previously. We come now to one more, I believe, which we'll take a look at now, having to do with something we discussed Friday evening, and that is Dangerous Summer. I neglected to point out, as did all of us, that this was concerned with Hemingway's return to Spain for the first time in about 30 years, I suppose, since the Spanish Civil War at least. No?
The Dangerous Summer didn't begin then. We returned first to Spain on our way to Africa in 1953, and this was 1959.
I see. But this is at the time, this is not the time of the Dangerous Summer?
Yes.
It is the time of the Dangerous Summer.
Yes, he started
And
work-
we did not explain the Dangerous Summer was concerned with a mano a mano between
Yes.
Ordóñez and
Ordóñez
and
Luis Miguel Dominguin.
Dominguin.
There's Ordóñez.
yes.
Antonio. He and his wife and their two daughters and one daughter's fiancé and the other daughter's husband all came over this fall, and we had a wild, happy reunion, singing Spanish songs.
This is a presentation of the bull to Hemingway in the arena. Is that correct?
In this picture, he was the matador threw the hat up to dedicate the bullfight to Hemingway. This was in Saragossa. Was that it? And this picture was taken by Peter Buckley, who went along with on the trip, that whole tour through Saragossa and the rest of Spain during that.
Well, we did. So many Americans did the sort of the
Yeah.
round of bullfights together. Peter had his own car. You know. There's that dear, darling Pilar. I love that boat.
It looks very
She has a
ominous
black-
there. It was considered to be at one point in his mind, a possible submarine chaser during World War II, wasn't it?
Oh, he used it as a submarine chaser, definitely, for a long time.
It looks like
He
a
had
warship.
crazy
there.
scheme for dropping bombs on the subs and things from Pilar. Of course, she was just a wooden boat. Anyway, she had a black hull and green decks, and she had marvelous heavy timber. She was not at all fragile. She could withstand any kind of storm, and we used to get big ones. That sky is typical. This is hurricane season in September, and that sky is typical of that kind of weather off Cuba when there are not close hurricanes.
The next photograph we will look at is of Hemingway in his library in
Cuba.
Havana. Excuse me?
In Cuba, not Havana, outside Havana.
You left the books there.
8,000 of them, unfortunately. All but a very few. I had no idea where I would be able to put them at that time. So there they are. Maybe I'll go down and get them sometime.
You also came upon, among your papers, a scrapbook of your obituaries compiled as a result of your plane crash in Africa. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that.
I don't remember them, but Ernest was fascinated with them.
Yeah,
Go
we
ahead,
have
Jo.
two scrapbooks up at the library. One is bound in zebra, and the other one, I'm not exactly sure what kind of animal.
Horse, I think.
Horse. And one is filled with newspaper clippings about the two crashes in Africa. A lot of them do say that the Hemingways were probably, killed in the crashes. And then the other scrapbook is full of letters mostly telegrams of congratulations on being alive. And they're fascinating to look at and to read through them. They're, people that have written in to congratulate, many of them were like figures that I have known and friends, and I guess some family too had written in. They will be open soon for people to see. They just have to be preserved and
Do you
taken care of.
recall among the collection
No.
which was your favorite, Mary?
Well,
Did you have a formal Alden Whitman New York Times? published?
I don't remember whether we had him. I suppose so. Ernest was fascinating. He read his obituaries for days and days. Just so silly. Anyway, but what amused me so was the very first telegram to arrive at our hotel in Nairobi after we got there, because we crashed up in Uganda, was one from my ex-husband, Mr. Noel Monks, the late Mr. Noel Monks. Anyway, I thought it was very sweet of him to take the trouble to wire us quickly from London.
Did you not crash twice?
Yes, we crashed twice in 2 days.
What happened there?
Well, first crash, I told you about that the other day when we were photographing Murchison Falls.
Not on the air, you didn't. So go ahead
Didn't
very
I?
briefly. I don't believe so.
Well, anyway, we sliced the aileron off with an old piece of telegraph wire. And of course, the thing couldn't move, the little Cessna. It couldn't be maneuvered anymore without his tailpiece. So he set us down, and I had a couple of cracked ribs, but Ernest, much heavier, banged against his seat belt and had all kinds of internal injuries. And the second plane was one on which we were being flown out, presumably back to civilization, and that one crashed on takeoff and burned. That was the following evening. In the meantime, we had one night on a hill, absolutely surrounded with elephants. Ernest was really he didn't sleep very well. I was so exhausted, and one gets a certain trauma a bit from that kind of thing. And so I slept and kept snoring, apparently, and Ernest would come over and touch me lightly and say, "Please don't snore so loud, the elephants don't like it."
Is it not true that you came out of the bush at one point and there was a sort of African Queen boat that wouldn't believe your story and wouldn't pick you up or something?
Yes. Mm-hmm. There's no regular on that particular lake.
Was this
It goes
on
up to
Queen,
Murchison
Lake
Falls.
Victoria, Murchison Falls?
Yes,
Huh?
it goes up the Lake Rudolph, is it? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
whatever.
Offhand, I can't.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is no regular service. By the greatest luck and chance in the world, this boat had been chartered for the day by a doctor who practiced, a British doctor, surgeon, who practiced at Kampala. And it was his wife's parents' 25th or 50th or something wedding anniversary, and they chose to do this boat trip. And if it hadn't been for that, we would have had to walk. I had on little soft shoes like these. We would have had to walk perhaps like 40 miles through unpathed jungle to get to any place, and certainly to a telegraph wire.
I was very much struck as we talked during the preceding evening of the fact that you discussed somewhat matter-of-factly that he had shot himself, and recalled the extraordinary gallantry that you displayed in keeping or seeking to the privacy of his death to himself. I wonder at what point did it become apparent to you that you would have to deal with the outside world in terms of the reality of his death?
This was, I suppose, it's automatic. If you see something coming toward your eye, you close it. And this was some attempt at self-defense, I think. My beginning thing of being unable to believe that this had happened. You better read my book. That's all in my book.
I'm waiting
Sooner
to
or
read
later.
that. When will I be able to?
I don't know, not right away, but within a year, I hope, perhaps.
That covers the span of your whole career as a journalist, and quite a prominent one before you met Ernest Hemmingway.
Fooling around everywhere.
In the few minutes we have left, I suppose one thing I'm tickled to death to be able to tell our viewing audience is that we're building these 6 programs as we go, but the last of them, the 6th, will be the literary effect of the style of Ernest Hemingway on James Jones, William Styron, and Ralph Ellison, who will be here to tell about this.
It's very nice of them, isn't
And we hope to have reminiscences and we would like to make sort of a record of this particular point in time of those close to Ernest Hemingway. So, in the short minutes we have left, let's go to Jo August's exegetical approach to some of the materials for Islands in the Stream, which we have facsimiles of. And Jo, if we cut to those, perhaps you'll tell us the first of them is what? The manuscript?
There were two almost complete manuscripts for Islands in the Stream. The first one was a totally different writing of the Bimini section, and the second section on Miami.
Now we're looking right now at chapter 2, it says.
Yeah, what I have brought is a page from chapter 2 of the first draft of Bimini, and he goes on to describe where it is and how it's like, what it's like. He says, if you like to read, Bimini is a good place because nobody bothers you in the daytime. The angler who came over to the island from Miami and Palm Beach to fish are paying such a high charter rate for their boats that they get out early and stay out until late. There are always a few rummies who just come for the trip, to drink and get away from their wives, and they might have the rum-born inspiration to come up and call, but there is a white-painted picket fence around the grounds of the house on the King's Highway side, with a gate with a lock on it, and from the porch you could hear Joseph at the gate say, "No, sir, Mr. George is not at home. No, sir, he ain't in the house. No, sir, no word on when he's coming back."
Now we move to the second stage of all this, which is what?
The second stage is the typescript of the novel the way it's actually published. And I thought interesting, up on the sides he's made all these little notes to himself about how he's going to change the book.
Read, Jo, just a few of those.
And the one on the left-hand side in the corner says, "May have to put in third person throughout and use he and George Thomas instead of I." He signs it E.H., and then he says maybe not. Well, he was still calling the hero George Thomas at that time. He changes the name to Thomas Hudson further on. And then another interesting one is over in the other corner. He says change Tom to Andrew throughout and vice versa. And Tom and Andrew are the two sons, and he switched their names around throughout the whole manuscript.
Mary, we were commenting about the fact that Islands in the Sun is perhaps the only place in fiction that I know of Ernest Hemingway where he deals with the father-son relationship in prototypical terms with respect to his own sons.
Except for a couple short stories.
Yeah, short stories.
And we
Few
have
short
finally notes on how the novel will end?
Yeah, there's a page of notes which he wrote to himself on how he's going. No, not on the ending. It's more in the middle section of the book. And some of them he followed and some of them he didn't. But he says, after 100, which was, I guess, page 100, he gets to the finca and finds a message to check in immediately. The lieutenant spoke in Castellano, and he said immediately, repeat immediately. You would know where. He said it was a business matter. Has to miss afternoon with M. She bitter. Worthless explanations. Well, the sentence there is actually put into the book with a few changes to make it more, readable. And he did have to miss his afternoon with the woman, I think, whose name was in the book.
Can't remember her name.
Yeah, she was nameless in the book, who came in. And then he goes on, he says, he waits until after the plane is gone and the signal is canceled by another one. Colonel returns to Haiti. M's plane gone. He looks up Lil, and she is angry, but she takes him in. Spends night with Lil, whose telephone he has given if he has to be reached.
Jo, we'll have to direct our viewers to your collection to see the rest of this. Thank you both so very much for coming tonight. Tomorrow night, part 3 of The Legend of Ernest Hemingway. Good night for Roundtable. I'm Harold Hayes.